Monday morning, downtown Starbucks. I'm scrolling email in a slow line when the pastry case turns into a mirror. 2 feet behind me, my fiancée, Claire, tilts her head and kisses a man I've never seen. The hiss of the steamer cuts out like someone pulled the sound from the room. I don't spin around. I don't shout. I watch the reflection, his hand on her back, the smug half-smile that says, "This isn't new." My name is Jake, and in that breath my role changed. Not the jealous guy. You can dismiss him. The witness. The recorder. Time, 9:17 a.m. Blue sedan. Plate 7 DPK394. Latte goes cold in my hand as the questions heat up. Who is he? How long? And why do it inches from me unless they think I won't see? If you've ever felt your life crack and chose not to blink, stay with me. Because I didn't chase a fight. I started building proof. It was the kind of Monday you can set your watch to. Same route, same red lights that never favor you, same parking spot if you beat the rush. I remember thinking about quarterly numbers and whether I'd remembered to thaw the chicken for dinner. My phone buzzed with calendar reminders. Budget call at 10, vendor follow-up at 1. Nothing dramatic. It's funny how adult life stacks up like Tetris. Emails, errands, a latte to brace for the inbox. In line at Starbucks, I did what everybody does. Scrolled, half awake, pretending the day was under control. A dad coaxed his kid to stop tapping the pastry glass. A woman complained about oat milk running out. I could smell cinnamon and fresh espresso. It was routine, almost comforting. That's the point, I think. You don't expect your life to crack in a place where people argue over foam. But ordinary has a way of sharpening the blade that cuts it, especially when you don't see it coming. The moment I saw them in the reflection, the soundscape died. No grinder, no steamer, no chatter, just the drum line in my chest. I've heard people talk about tunnel vision. This was more like the world dunked its head underwater. I watched without turning, like a man listening through a wall he pretends isn't there. I could feel the heat of bodies in line, hear a barista call Jake, like it was for someone else. I didn't react. Years of being the calm one at work kicked in. Read the room, control your face, store the facts. There's a pride older men know. Don't make a scene. Don't hand someone your emotions in a paper cup. I studied posture, hands, the casual lean that says, "We've done this." Her eyes flickered toward me. His smile stayed. That told me everything. Shock didn't rage, it settled. And in that settling, the silence grew teeth. I picked up my coffee, and the hunt began. I've raised my voice before. It never helped. You feel bigger for 5 seconds and smaller for the rest of the night. So I made a choice right there in line. A choice men my age understand. Discipline beats drama. I inhaled, set my shoulders, and let the moment pass over me like a wave I didn't owe a reaction to. Then I did the simplest, most adult thing possible. I paid, I stepped aside, and I took inventory. Timestamp. Position in line. Who stood near them. What he wore. Dark jacket, scuffed work boots like he wasn't afraid of a ladder. The kind of details you remember when you've managed crews or bought your own tools. She pulled away quickly, scanning the room. I didn't look back. I let the door close behind me and felt the cool air slap my face awake. People think heartbreak burns hot. Sometimes it freezes you clear. That's how I knew I'd keep my edge. I stood on the sidewalk pretending to check email while trying not to drop the cup I no longer wanted. The city had that early morning sharpness, leaf blowers, delivery trucks, a man arguing into his Bluetooth about timelines. I opened a new note and typed like I was logging a job site. 9:17 a.m. Claire, blue sedan, plate 7DPK394. It felt oddly steadying. Men like me have lists for oil changes and mortgage payoffs. This was the same muscle, flexed in self-defense. They came out together, moving like a routine, and I caught a quick photo, her head tilted, his hand brushing her back. Not art. Evidence. I saved it, locked my phone, and stared at my reflection in the window. A man who could yell, or a man who could build a case. I picked the version of myself I could respect tomorrow morning. Because respect, once you lose it for yourself, is harder to get back than any ring. There's a look people share when they believe they're safe, like standing backstage with the lights still down. Claire had it. He did too. It wasn't frantic or furtive, it was easy, familiar. That told me the Starbucks moment wasn't a glitch. It was a habit bold enough to flirt with daylight. He wore that half-smirk men wear when they think they're the only ones in on the joke. Maybe you've seen it in a meeting, a guy who cuts corners and gets applause anyway. It lights up something in you that's deeper than jealousy. It's a sense of order being bent, like rules are for people who still care what a promise means. I felt my jaw tighten, then relax. I wasn't going to feed that smirk. I'd erase it. Not by swinging, but by turning the lights on in the whole theater. Their confidence had a clock. I could hear it start ticking the second I stopped pretending I hadn't noticed. People will tell you walking away is weakness. Those people haven't won many long games. I walked, not to run, but to get distance and think. The latte was warm in my hand and wrong in my mouth, but it grounded me. I passed a bus stop where a guy in a suit was teaching his kid how to tie a shoe with one knee on the bench. Normal life continued, which was almost comforting. I circled the block to watch the front without being obvious. This isn't spy stuff. It's the same patience you use when the contractor says he'll be there between 9 and noon. You don't rage, you prepare. I watched through glass as they laughed like high schoolers skipping class. That told me two things. The affair had history, and I had time. Time to build, not blow up. When they pulled away, I exhaled for the first time since the mirror. I had a direction now, and a license plate. Autumn air has a way of making everything honest, the kind that wakes your skin and makes your eyes water a little. I leaned against a lamppost, took a breath, and let the sting clear my head. My father used to say, measure twice, cut once. That's not just for wood. I replayed the scene, distance, angle, how her hand fit the crook of his arm. I checked the note again and took 2 more photos of the door, the street, the cameras above the awning. Not because I needed them today, but because I might need them tomorrow. Men my age don't love drama. We love documentation. It's how we win disputes with customer service and how we remember the water heater warranty. The latte cooled to the exact temperature of regret, and I tossed it. This wasn't about coffee anymore. It was about control. I turned toward the office, not to work, but to quietly start the hardest project of my life. Back at my desk, the building's HVAC hummed like a white noise machine for grown-ups. I forwarded one harmless email just to lay a clean trail, then opened the photo. It wasn't perfect, slightly blurred, her shoulder blocking part of his face, but it told a story. I tagged the image with the time and location. I added the plate number to a fresh folder called Housekeeping, so it wouldn't look suspicious if anyone ever glanced. That small act, giving chaos a label, made the room stop spinning. I thought about the times I'd kept receipts just in case, and how those boring habits suddenly felt like body armor. Then a text from Claire landed. Dinner or takeout tonight? Your call. My thumbs hovered and I typed, let's cook. The normalcy tasted like chalk, but it bought me quiet. Quiet is where truth grows roots. I closed my eyes for a beat, then opened a new note titled, Questions. The first one was, how long? That night, Claire was already chopping onions when I got home. Country playlist, candle on the counter, the whole domestic postcard. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day. I matched her tone like I was mirroring a client, steady, light, safe. Older men know this dance. If you push, the door slams. If you wait, people reveal themselves. I set my phone on the charger in plain sight and made small talk about meetings while my mind walked the morning like a crime scene. She moved easily, too easily, sliding from fiancé to hostess without a wobble. That told me her compartments were well built. Over dinner, she floated wedding details, flowers, playlists, seating charts. I nodded and filed her timelines against mine. Nothing to confront, everything to compare. After we ate, I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and opened the notes again. My heart wasn't racing now, it was counting. Tomorrow I'd start checking calendars. Tonight, I mastered the mask. I spent my lunch break doing what calm men do when the floor tilts. We write things down. I opened the same note from the sidewalk and filled it like a work order. Time, location, blue sedan, plate 7 DPK 394, height, jacket, scuffed boots. I added the Starbucks camera above the awning and the angle that caught the door. It felt like tightening loose screws on a gate. Basic, but it keeps things from falling apart. Claire texted me a heart and a question about salmon versus pasta for dinner. I typed, "Salmon sounds good," and stared at the bubbles until they stopped. The old me would have asked, "Everything okay today?" The new me asked nothing and learned more. I copied the plate into a clean document labeled Home Projects. It wasn't hiding, it was housekeeping. Then I drew a line across the page and wrote one word: motive. The grind in my chest eased. The facts were starting to stack, and stacks don't lie. After work, I drove home on autopilot, the kind of commute where you remember the brake lights but not the song on the radio. In the last mile, I made a quiet decision. I would not be the guy who throws a plate and sleeps on the couch. I'd be the guy who opens a folder and sleeps fine. At the apartment, Claire was already measuring spices like a cooking show host, and the place smelled like lemon and basil. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day. I said it was steady. That was true, steady like a hand before a delicate cut. While the salmon baked, I stepped into the office and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked like a pulse. I pulled up a couple of public record sites, not hacking, just the same tools you use to check property lines or a contractor's license. I typed the plate number once, twice, the search wheel spun, then a name appeared that would change everything. The result was plain: registered to Brandon Cole, blue sedan, address in a northern suburb. No drama, no music swell. County records don't have feelings. They just sit there and tell you things you wish weren't true. I clicked through like I was comparing insurance quotes: VIN, title date, address history. The rhythm of it calmed me the way checking a breaker panel calms an outage. You start to see which switch tripped. Claire called from the kitchen, asking if we had foil. I brought it, smiling, then returned to the screen. One more query, this time through public marriage records. My hands paused, not sure I wanted the answer. The page loaded. Spouse, Megan Cole. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling like it could offer a different version. It didn't. Pain has its own gravity, but so does clarity. For the first time that day, I didn't feel alone. Somewhere, a woman named Megan was living my mirror image, and she didn't know it yet. I carried the plates to the table and watched Claire laugh about a meme her coworker sent. I nodded in the right places. Inside, a new idea sparked. If Brandon was married, then Megan wasn't just a stranger. She was an ally I hadn't met. Older men know that feeling from job sites and neighborhoods. When trouble hits, the person who understands fastest is the one standing in the same mud. After dinner, Claire folded napkins and asked whether we should finalize the DJ this weekend. I said sure, and stacked our dishes with the same neatness I was stacking facts. Back at the laptop, I confirmed the address, the HOA, even the cul-de-sac layout on satellite view. I didn't need all of it tonight, but patterns start with extra lines on the page. The thought hit hard and clean. I wasn't chasing gossip. I was protecting a future. Mine. And now, possibly, Megan's. I closed the lid gently, like sealing a box of proof. Tomorrow, tracking begins. The next morning, I left early and parked a block from the office, thinking clearer in the quiet of my car than at any desk. Claire had Find My turned on from months back when she lost her phone at the gym. Most couples do. It's a convenience until it's a compass. I opened the app with the same steadiness I'd used to back a trailer, slow and exact. At 9:12, her phone was at work. At 10:47, still at work. At 12:22, it blipped 3 blocks east. Coffee with a friend, maybe. I didn't judge, I just logged. Men my age know, judging fogs the glass, logging clears it. The afternoon settled into normal pings. At 6:11, a text. Working late, don't wait up. I typed, okay, love you, then watched the dot drift. 10 minutes passed. 15. It moved south, not toward her office, but beyond it, steady as a promise you can't hear. My hands didn't shake. I marked the time. Then I started the engine. Traffic was light, the kind you get when most people are home arguing over homework or shows to stream. I kept 2 cars back, not hiding, just being forgettable. The dot settled near a downtown hotel I knew from conferences. I parked across the street and let the windshield frame the entrance like a stage. 5 minutes. 7. Then the blue sedan rolled into view, familiar as the wrong ringtone in a quiet room. He pulled up, paused in the fire lane, and texted, probably, "Here." Claire came out laughing into her phone. She didn't scan the sidewalk. She didn't need to. She slid in, and they drove off together. I stayed put and wrote 2 lines. 6:44, Claire exits hotel, enters blue sedan. 6:45, vehicle heads north. That was it. No chase. No heroics. Just proof, stacked on proof. The worst feeling wasn't anger. It was how normal it looked. And that told me the next step couldn't be a scene. It had to be a plan. Back home, the apartment felt staged. Throw pillows too straight, candle too polite. Claire texted, "Still at the office, almost done," and I typed, "Got it." The calm inside me was unsettling, like the stillness before a storm your grandfather could smell. I sat at the table with a legal pad, the old kind with the cardboard back, and rewrote the timeline in thick black ink. Timestamps have weight on paper. They don't blink or buffer. I added small things that mattered to men who fix what breaks: camera angles, door positions, the valet stand's distance to the lobby. This wasn't obsession. It was craft. You don't cut on a table that wobbles, and you don't confront on facts that wobble either. I wrote one more sentence and felt the pen bite the page. Do not confront yet. It was the line I'd lean on when the noise got loud. The pad sat there like a quiet partner. I realized then my calm wasn't numbness. It was control. The next evening, I suggested we cook again. Claire smiled like a person who believes the bridge will hold. I watched her move around the kitchen with the ease of someone who's practiced 2 lives. While the pasta boiled, she told me about a tough client and asked my advice. That's the part that gets older men, the muscle memory of being useful. I kept it simple. Stick to the contract. Put it in writing. She laughed and said, "That's your answer to everything." I smiled. She wasn't wrong. After dinner, she claimed she had emails to finish. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and went to the bedroom. I didn't snoop. I synchronized. I matched her story to her calendar to yesterday's pings. Small mismatches stacked like shims under a sagging step. Nothing dramatic to confront. Everything necessary to confirm. When she finally slept, I sat in the living room with the lights low and read the timeline once more. The mask held. So did the plan. The break came like a loose thread on a shirt. Tug it, and a whole seam comes free. Claire left her laptop open while she showered. I would never have touched it before. That was before. I didn't dig, I glanced. Subject lines only. Next time. Great seeing you. Invoices. The one labeled "Next Time" had a name in the preview. Brandon. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I clicked. It wasn't flirting, it was logistics. Times, places, little jokes that land only when you've said the quiet parts out loud before. I took screenshots and sent them to a private cloud I'd set up that afternoon. Redundancy. It's how you keep basements dry and truth intact. She stepped from the hallway, towel in her hair, asking if I'd seen her charger. I handed it to her and kissed her temple. She smiled. I smiled back. Later, when the apartment went dark, I looked at the ceiling and felt the bridge groan. It wasn't going to hold. Saturday gave me what weekdays don't: unstructured hours. I used them like a careful driver uses a full tank. No sudden moves, no bragging revs. Claire said she had errands and left late morning. The dot on Find My did the same routine: work, coffee, quiet, then drifted toward the same downtown hotel. I didn't follow her this time. I went looking for the sedan. In the suburb listed on the registration, I rolled slow through a cul-de-sac that looked like a commercial for stability. Trimmed shrubs, kids' bikes, a flag snapping on a porch. 3rd unit from the corner, there it was, the blue sedan. I parked a street over and memorized the townhouse number, the upstairs window with the light on, the path from door to lot. The world didn't tilt, it aligned. Whatever came next wouldn't be a shout in a parking lot. It would be a conversation at a doorbell, with a woman named Megan who deserved to know what her driveway already did. I reopened the email thread labeled "Next Time," the one with Brandon's name sitting there like a stain that won't lift. It read like minutes from a meeting no one dared write down. Dates, hotel abbreviations, jokes that only work when the rule has already been broken. Then I saw a line that tightened my jaw. He didn't notice. Not a question, a brag. I thought about every time I've fixed something around the house and someone said, "No one can tell the difference." You can. The person who repairs the damage always can. I screenshotted each page, slow and methodical, the way you document hail dents for an insurance claim. No flourishes, no captions, just proof. I backed them up twice, once to a cloud folder with a boring name and once to a drive Claire didn't know existed. The thread ended with a winking emoji. I stared at it until the anger cooled to steel. They thought I hadn't noticed. I had. Now I wouldn't forget. Humiliation comes fast, like a slap. Resolve arrives slower, like a knot you tie right so it won't slip. I closed my eyes and replayed that brag. He didn't notice. And felt something familiar in my chest. Older men know it. The moment you stop trying to win an argument and start building a case. I opened a new document and wrote a simple header. Plan. Under it, bullet points, nothing fancy. Continue logging pings, avoid confrontation, gather diversified evidence, text, photo, timestamps. Keep work routine normal, keep voice steady. It looked like a project brief because it was one. A marriage is paperwork and promises, so is the truth. Claire called from the other room asking if we should finalize the florist. I said, "Let's do it Saturday," and added the date to my notes, another marker to measure against. I saved the file and breathed out slowly. Humiliation was done using me. From here on, I was using it. I spent the next hour doing the dull work that saves you later. Screenshots labeled by time, not emotion. Folders nested like those tidy drawers older folks keep for warranties and taxes. I even created a decoy space, a folder labeled Budget 2025, that no one would touch unless they were looking for yawns. Inside it lived the real thing: email fragments, calendar overlaps, a simple spreadsheet with columns for date, location, and corroborating evidence. I recorded the plate and ping together, then cross-checked with the hotel address pulled from a credit card charge in Claire's photo roll. This wasn't hacking. It was adult life's least glamorous skill: documentation. When I finished, the desktop looked boring enough to pass any glance test, and that gave me a strange comfort. Order is a life jacket. I leaned back, stretched the stiffness from my shoulders, and set a reminder to back up the drive tomorrow. I wasn't just collecting proof anymore, I was protecting it. The next evening, Claire curled up beside me with a tablet open to color palettes and centerpieces. She tapped through Pinterest boards the way people shop for a version of themselves. "Do you like navy or charcoal for the suits?" she asked, like there weren't two lives running on parallel tracks. I answered what any man balancing peace and purpose might. Either, what fits the room? I listened more than I spoke. Listening is a veteran skill. It saved marriages and ruined lies. While she scrolled, I mapped her timelines against my files. The rehearsal dinner date sat next to an email from Brandon about next Wednesday. The florist visit fell on a day her phone spent 2 hours near a hotel. I didn't flinch. You don't tug a thread you plan to show the whole room later. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I let it rest there and kept breathing evenly. If love is a promise, listening is the ledger. Mine was changing color. I tailed them twice that week, not close enough to spook, just near enough to learn. You'd be amazed what you can see if you drive like a man with nowhere urgent to be. They chose a small Italian place with a red awning and the kind of lighting that forgives choices. I parked across the street and watched between sips of bad coffee from a corner deli. They sat side by side, not across. A detail that says this is habit, not a one-off thrill. When the server cleared plates, she touched Brandon's wrist like she was pressing a thought into his skin. Every move looked rehearsed. I logged time, took 2 discrete photos, and noted the exit through the side door. Back in the car, I wrote a sentence that made my knuckles tighten. They're comfortable. Comfort means frequency. Frequency means footprints. And footprints lead somewhere if you're patient enough to follow without stomping. I was. I would be. The map was getting lines. The next site shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. They didn't head home after dinner. They walked into a jewelry store that stayed open late. I parked and watched through glass as if a pane could keep a life from fogging. Brandon pointed. Claire tried on a ring. The overhead lights made little fireworks on her finger. She laughed, a bright public laugh you save for moments you want remembered. The clerk leaned in like this happened every night. I felt the floor drop an inch and then stop. Not a fall, an adjustment. This wasn't cheating in shadows. It was rehearsal under lights. I took a photo that showed their angle to the case and the shape of the ring tray, details a clerk might recall later. Then I wrote 10 words that changed the temperature of the car. She's planning a future while borrowing mine to pay for it. The shock burned off. Strategy stayed. This ring wasn't for me, and that was the point. I drove home with the radio off and the window cracked just enough to keep me awake. Somewhere between the third stoplight and my driveway, the math added up. She wasn't choosing between two men. She was running 2 timelines until one paid off. There's a kind of adult multitasking you're proud of. Mortgage and college fund, job and aging parents. This wasn't that. This was gambling with house money and calling it love. I sat in the dark living room and opened the wedding spreadsheet we'd built together. Then I opened my evidence sheet beside it. Side by side, they looked like twins who grew up in different neighborhoods. Our deposit dates lined up against hotel pings. Our cake tasting sat a day before a next time email. I saved both files and closed the laptop softly, like putting a child to bed. The house felt unfamiliar, like a rental staged to sell. I whispered to the empty room, "Not anymore." Sleep came thin, like the inch of snow that fools your driveway into looking soft. I watched the ceiling fan and counted the turns it took to reach morning. When the sun came, I did what men who've been through layoffs and floods do. I worked. I called the bank about separating a savings account I'd started for wedding expenses. I labeled receipts I'd tossed in a drawer. I organized photos by date instead of emotion. Pain wants you scattered. Purpose wants you squared away. By noon, the apartment looked the same, but my file tree didn't. Claire texted a photo of menu options for the reception and asked which entree felt us. I typed chicken, then added the timestamp to my sheet. The mundanity felt cruel and useful at once. Most of adult life is boring. Mortgage auto pays, dental cleanings, oil changes. That's why lies hide so well. They expect you to nap. I poured coffee and refused to. Something steady was building. I returned to Brandon's trail with fresh eyes. The county site led me to a deed. The deed led me to a mortgage. The mortgage listed Megan Cole. No kids on file. Townhouse bought 3 years ago. I pulled the neighborhood on satellite view and traced the cul-de-sac from memory to confirm the unit I'd seen. Then I searched for public contact info. Nothing dramatic, just what anyone can find when trying to locate a lost package. A work listing popped up, a company directory entry that confirmed her name and a professional email. I didn't write to her, not yet. I wrote to myself, "You are not alone." The words changed the room. Adults know the power of not alone. The neighbor who shows up with a shovel during a blizzard. The coworker who says, "I'll be in that meeting with you." I closed the browser and rested my hands flat on the desk. The next step wasn't anger, it was a knock. I drove back to that cul-de-sac near sunset, the hour when porches glow and sprinklers arc across tidy lawns. I parked where I had before and watched the upstairs window flick on, then off. The blue sedan sat quiet, like a dog that knows not to bark. I thought about my father telling me, "If you can't fix it, face it." Fixing wasn't on the table anymore. Facing was. I didn't have a speech in mind, just a promise not to blindside another person the way I had been. I took a slow lap around the block, practicing the first 10 words. "Hi, I'm Jake. We need to talk about Brandon." When I returned to the townhouse, the porch light snapped on with the timer. I stood at the foot of the steps with my evidence tight in my pocket and my heart steady in my chest. The plan had reached its hinge. I climbed the steps and raised my hand to knock. I stood on Megan's porch rehearsing 10 words. "Hi, I'm Jake. We need to talk about Brandon." She opened the door with the guarded look people wear for salesmen and bad news. I said my line and watched her shoulders lift, then lock. "Who are you?" she asked, not unkindly, just braced. I told her simply that Claire is my fiancée, and I have reason to believe Brandon is involved with her. No flourishes, just the truth that fit on one breath. She didn't invite me in. Not yet. I held out my phone and asked if she'd look. The photo wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. Claire's profile, Brandon's hand at her back, hotel glass reflecting a life I didn't recognize. Megan's mouth thinned, her eyes filled and cleared like a storm deciding. She stepped back from the doorway and said, "Kitchen." The word wasn't an invite, it was a verdict. I crossed the threshold knowing a team had just been born. Megan's kitchen looked like most kitchens that pay mortgages. Stacked mail, a fruit bowl with one good apple, a calendar with dentist appointments circled. We sat. I placed my phone down like a witness. She kept her hands around a coffee mug that had gone cold. "Show me," she said. I scrolled. The Starbucks reflection, the Italian restaurant, the jewelry store. Her jaw clenched at the ring. "How long?" I told her what I had, not what I feared. She stood, paced twice, then opened a drawer and pulled out a thin folder. "I thought it was overtime," she said, laying down statements with charges from places she'd never eaten. We aligned dates. My photos sat under her line items. 2 lives clicked into the same grid. She stared at the table like she could will it back blank. "What do you want to do?" she asked. The room held its breath. I said, "We stop being targets." She nodded once. "Then we plan." We built a timeline the way adults build anything that has to hold, straight, level, with good fasteners. I listed my timestamps. Megan added card charges and Brandon's travel receipts. We drew lines between working late and parking garage swipes, between team dinner and hotel Wi-Fi logins. It felt like fixing a fence after a storm. Post by post, the boundary reappeared. Megan's voice wavered once when she said, "That's our anniversary night." She circled the date and then underlined it harder. I let the silence sit because grief needs room, even in war rooms. When we finished, the board looked undeniable. If a stranger walked in, they'd see it too. "You did this fast," she said, noticing the order. "Men like me keep boring files," I answered. "They pay off when life stops being boring." She almost smiled. Then her face set again. "We need something they can't spin." I nodded. We had a frame. Now we needed sound. We poured 2 glasses of water like it was whiskey and set rule number 1, no scenes. "They're good at lying in rooms with soft music," I said. "We need hard edges." Megan added rule number 2, protect the money. She'd already frozen a shared card once before for a fraud scare. This time she took notes on who to call and when. I wrote redundancy on the top of my pad. 2 copies of everything, 2 places to store them, 2 people who know the passwords. She showed me a second card with cash withdrawals Brandon claimed were tips for the crew. We tagged the dates. The pattern wasn't just crooked, it was proud of itself. "He counts on me wanting peace more than truth," she said quietly. Older couples know that negotiation. Peace feels cheaper, until it isn't. We agreed on a method. Gather, verify, then act. Not the other way around. That was the rule that would decide the ending. Megan slid over a statement with 4 restaurant charges we could tie to my photos. We circled each one, a month apart like clockwork. Then came hotel incidentals Brandon called client hosting, room service at 10:41 p.m., valet at midnight. It's amazing how numbers read like sentences if you let them. We added my plate photos, mapped the dates, and built a simple spreadsheet any manager could respect. Date, place, both of our proofs. No conjecture columns, just facts. She watched me stack digital copies on an external drive and said, "You're thorough." I told her I've lost a receipt before and paid for it twice. She nodded. "Me too. Different receipt." A small laugh broke the room and then died, because grief was still seated with us. "What next?" she asked. I pointed to a blank row marked audio-video. Documents make people argue about context. Voices don't. We needed to hear them say it. That's when the phone in her drawer started ringing. Megan hesitated, then pulled a shallow drawer beside the stove. She'd put it there an hour earlier, she admitted, after finding it under a stack of t-shirts in their closet. A black, no-name phone, the kind teenagers buy with cash. It buzzed again, screen lighting the underside of the cabinets. She tapped it open with a code she'd watched Brandon use once for a garage keypad. The inbox bloomed, messages from a number saved as C, photos, times. Next time, threads that matched mine. My breath came tight, but steady. She scrolled to a text I felt in my bones. "He pays for everything. Once I'm set, it's just you and me." The words hit like a tool dropped on concrete, sharp, final, loud in the quiet. Megan closed her eyes, then opened them, drier. She handed me the phone. "We copy everything," she said, voice flat with purpose. We did. Images, threads, call logs, twice. The drawer clicked shut. The story had a new narrator. Them. We read that one line again. He pays for everything. And something unhooked in me. I had been filing pain under maybe. Not anymore. I wasn't the man ignored. I was the wallet exploited. There's a particular humiliation older men recognize. Trusting your name and money to a plan someone else is already cashing out. I opened a new page titled Financial Fastenings and wrote the steps I'd take by week's end. Separate joint expenses, reverse pending deposits where possible, catalog all wedding-related payments. Megan drafted her own list. Freeze card, create audit trail, secure personal accounts. It wasn't revenge, it was recovery. We printed the messages, date-stamped them, and slid them into a sleeve with our spreadsheet. Paper rustled like a flag you salute because you have to, not because you want to. We looked at each other across the kitchen table that had become a bench in a courtroom. "Audio," I said. "Video," she answered, and we both said, "PI." I didn't want a trench coat and a fedora. I wanted a professional with references and a contract. A buddy from work once hired a PI for a custody case. He sent me the contact. We met him at a coffee shop 2 towns over, the kind of place where nobody cares who you are if you tip. He listened, asked clean questions, and never once leaned on drama. "You're looking for corroboration," he said, like a contractor confirming load-bearing walls. We handed him our packet, photos, timelines, the burner phone prints. He slid it into a folder labeled with a case number, not our names. That mattered. He explained the legal lines, public spaces, no expectation of privacy, audio laws. Adults appreciate boundaries when everything else is slipping. We signed, paid a retainer that stung, and set expectations. A week for initial footage. He stood, shook our hands, and said, "If it's there, we'll see it." On the drive home, Megan finally exhaled. Waiting is a skill you learn paying off mortgages and raising kids. Steady, boring, necessary. The PI checked in with short texts that read like weather reports. Coverage tonight. Good angle. Audio likely. I went to work, met deadlines, changed the oil in my car in the driveway like a man refusing to let his life rust. Megan updated her audit trail and opened a separate account, her name only. We didn't talk every day, but when we did, it was to verify, not vent. 3 nights in, the PI sent a still. Claire and Brandon at the hotel entrance, faces clear, time-stamp crisp. A video followed, doors opening, her hand on his chest, a kiss that didn't flinch. I watched once, not twice. That was enough. Then came audio from the car, windows cracked, their laughter about how clueless they are. The words hit hard and clean. My phone buzzed again. "More coming." I muted the thread and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling stared back. We met the PI in his office, a small room that smelled like toner and strong coffee. He queued up clips on a laptop, matter of fact, like a dentist explaining x-rays. Claire and Brandon entering the hotel on 3 separate nights. A parking lot kiss that would insult any explanation. Audio where my name was a punchline and Megan's was an inconvenience. No ambiguity, no maybe. The PI paused on a frame with their faces lit by lobby light and said, "This is clear enough for a room." I knew the room he meant. Family, friends, the kind of witnesses that stop a lie from reforming. Megan wiped one tear and said, "Send the files." We copied them to 2 drives, labeled, and slipped each into a different envelope. Walking out, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Proof doesn't comfort, it clarifies. Outside, the late afternoon sun hit like truth, bright, unforgiving, making everything show. Megan looked at me. "Next step?" I said, "We build the stage." The PI worked like a contractor who shows up on time and measures twice. 3 nights, 3 entries. Claire and Brandon slipping into the same downtown hotel, lobby lights bright enough to erase excuses. He cued the footage on a laptop and let it run without commentary. Adults don't need narration. We need clarity. The timestamp sat in the corner like a clock you can't ignore. Angle from the curb, angle from the elevator bank, angle from the garage, their hands brushing in a way couples do when they think no one's watching. I didn't gape. I noted jacket, bag, cadence, the way Brandon scanned and Claire didn't. The PI paused, zoomed, showed faces that would match any driver's license. He tapped the spacebar and said, "There's audio too." I nodded once. Proof had moved from shapes to names. I felt the ground settle under me like a deck rebuilt with proper joists. We weren't guessing anymore. We were counting. The audio wasn't cinematic. It was ugly in the exact way truth often is. Window cracked, tires humming, Claire's laugh folding into Brandon's. Then the words that snapped something clean in my chest. "They're idiots. He'll never see it coming." No metaphors, no wiggle room. I thought about every older man who's ever been talked over in a meeting and smiled later because patience wins longer. I didn't clench. I wrote down the minute marks and let the sentences be the nails they were. Megan stared at the waveform like it was a lie detector that finally spoke English. "Play it again," she said, and we did. Once, not twice. Pain doesn't get smarter with replay. The PI looked at us, waiting for a reaction. I thanked him for the clarity and asked for copies to 2 drives. He nodded, professional to the end. As we left, the air outside felt colder and cleaner. Mockery had ended something. It had also begun our finish. Back at my place, Megan and I sat at the dining table with the blinds drawn like grown-ups who've learned privacy the hard way. We watched the clips again, not to reopen wounds, but to choose the cut point, the moment a room would understand without us saying a word. "Here," I said, freezing on the hotel kiss. "Follow with the car audio." Megan nodded, her face firming into a mask I recognized from people who've negotiated tough contracts. "We need a room that matters," she said. "Not an alley, not a parking lot, not a whisper at midnight. A room that would keep the truth standing after the first storm." We listed options and crossed them out. Workplaces invite HR. Public places invite chaos. Family invites history, which is exactly what they had stolen. She looked up. "If we get the room, can you stay calm?" I almost smiled. That's all I've done. The plan needed a stage. The stage needed an invitation. Sometimes you don't have to force the hinge. It swings toward you. 2 days later, Claire came home buoyant, the way people walk when they think a secret loves them back. "Let's host a family dinner next weekend," she said. "Your parents, mine, nothing fancy, just a chance to connect before the wedding." I stirred my coffee and kept my face still. The stage had arrived with place settings. "Great idea," I said, measuring my voice like a carpenter checks level. "I'll handle the TV hookup so we can show photos." She kissed my cheek and went hunting for recipes. I stepped into the hallway and texted Megan 2 words we'd been waiting to use. "This is it." She replied with an address and a time to meet before the dinner. My chest didn't pound. It counted. This wasn't a trap for them. It was a mirror for everyone. Claire hummed in the kitchen. I added HDMI cable to my grocery list. I treated the footage the way you treat evidence you might need 10 years from now. Clean labels, clear sequence, nothing cute. Clip 1, hotel entry, faces visible, timestamp bold. Clip 2, parking lot kiss, brief, undeniable. Clip 3, car audio, edited to the 10 seconds that carry the whole weight. He pays for everything. The PI had given me raw files. I made copies on 2 encrypted drives and uploaded a 3rd set to a cloud folder named like a tax document. I tested playback on my TV with the sound at conversation level. No jump scares, just truth. Then I printed a simple 1-page index, the kind you hand a judge, even if the judge is just a family who thought they knew the story. I slipped a small wireless remote into my jacket and clicked it twice to feel the travel. Everything worked, no drama required. The dinner had a menu now, so did the truth. 2 nights before the dinner, I ran one more test, not of the TV, but of Claire. We were out with friends at a busy restaurant. She stepped away to make a quick call. I followed to the bar, slid my phone, already recording, into the pocket of her jacket on the chair, then walked back to the table and told a story about a botched home repair. Adults know how to cover a seam. Claire returned smiling, checked her makeup in a spoon, and rejoined the conversation. Later, when she showered at home, I retrieved the phone and listened. Her voice was low and sharp. "Don't worry. He's clueless. I'm planning centerpieces. He's paying. After the honeymoon, I'm done." The words didn't make me angry. They made me still. I saved the file in 3 places and labeled it by date and room noise level. Then I set the phone down on the counter where she left it earlier. I didn't need to say a thing. The tape would. The next morning, I met Megan in her car a block from my place and played the new clip. She stared straight ahead while Claire's words filled the small space between us. "He pays for everything. After the honeymoon, I'm done." No pauses. No edits. Just the soft clink of glasses in the background and a future spoken out loud. Megan's jaw flexed, then settled. "That ends the debate," she said. "Not revenge, resolution." We added the file to our drives and updated the index to include restaurant call, Claire's voice, 0027. Then we walked through the dinner plan step by step like a fire drill. Who sits where, when the TV turns on, what to say if anyone tries to unplug the truth. "We will not raise our voices," I said. "We won't need to," she answered. We parted with a handshake that felt like closing a deal. The room had been chosen. The lights were next. The day before the dinner, Claire fussed over place cards and floral stems. I fussed over cable management and backup batteries. We moved like 2 people planning the same event for different reasons. She asked if I could make a slideshow of childhood photos to warm the room. I said yes and built one, short, sweet, exactly 3 minutes, because warmth makes contrast. In my jacket pocket, the remote sat beside a drive no one could mistake for anything friendly. I checked the TV settings and hid the HDMI cable so no one would accidentally tug it. Then I tested the power strip and took a photo of the setup in case someone claimed sabotage. Details aren't paranoia, they're insurance against the dust that chaos kicks up. That night, I ironed a shirt and set my watch. I looked in the mirror and saw a man who wasn't walking into a fight. He was walking into a verdict. The table could be beautiful. The truth would be plain. The afternoon of the dinner felt like those minutes before a storm your grandfather swore he could smell. My parents texted they were on their way. Claire's family sent smiley faces and exclamation points. I poured water into glasses and lined them up like soldiers. Claire floated from room to room, humming, beautiful in a way that felt borrowed. Brandon was due as a co-worker, a title that wouldn't survive dessert. Megan parked down the block with a covered dish and a spine of steel. I checked the remote one last time. Green light, full battery. I tucked the drive into the TV's side port and set the input so a single click would wake it. Claire squeezed my hand and said, "This feels right, doesn't it?" I met her eyes and said, "It does." The doorbell rang. Families bring history with them when they cross a threshold. Tonight, history would bring a gavel. I opened the door and let them in. Dinner smelled like rosemary and relief, the kind people believe is permanent because they want it to be. We ate, we traded stories. The slideshow of childhood photos drew the right laughs. Brandon arrived halfway through, charming, at ease, shaking hands like a man collecting alibis. He took a seat near the end of the table. Megan slipped in quietly 10 minutes later, placed her dish, and sat where she could see the TV. Claire stood for a toast about love and family and the future. Glasses lifted. The room glowed. I reached into my jacket and felt the small rectangle that had become a lever. Not anger, not even fear. Just the weight of a choice made weeks ago. I glanced at Megan. She gave one nod. I turned the remote in my hand until my thumb found the button I'd practiced in the dark. Then I pressed it. The screen woke. The room stilled. And the first frame of the truth filled the wall. The room paused between fork and plate when the TV woke. The lobby camera filled the wall, Claire and Brandon stepping through the hotel doors like they owned the carpet. No narration, no music, just the soft clink of dishes and someone's breath catching. Faces tilted toward the screen, toward me, then back. My mother set her glass down with care, the way you do when your hands want to shake. Claire's smile slid off like steam from a mirror. Brandon's chair scraped half an inch. I didn't speak. Adults know when silence says more. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Claire reached for the remote that wasn't there. I kept my hands visible on the table. The clip ended with them disappearing into an elevator. The screen went black. You could hear a clock 2 rooms away. Then, with the smallest click, the next clip cued. The parking lot kiss, clear enough to make explanations run out of road. The room leaned forward as one. I let the kiss finish, then pressed for the 10 seconds that matter. Car audio, window cracked, Claire's laugh, Brandon's low voice, and the line that took the air out of the room. They're idiots. He'll never see it coming. Gasps. A fork slipped, chimed against a plate. My father stared like he'd just watched a bridge he helped build crack. Claire's mother covered her mouth, eyes shining with something between shock and apology. Claire whispered, "This is taken out of context, but context doesn't sound like disrespect." Brandon pushed back his chair to stand. Before he could, Megan set down her dish and her voice at the same time. "That's my husband." Heads pivoted. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. She lifted a manila folder the way people lift a warranty when the machine stops working. "There's more," she said, looking at me, then the room. "Enough that none of us have to argue." I nodded and clicked again. The TV showed a still of hotel entry with the timestamp enlarged, then a quick slide. My photo from the Italian place, date stamped. Megan's card charge from the same hour. Side by side like 2 witnesses who never met but tell the same story. Claire tried to step between us and the screen. I kept my seat and my voice level. "Please watch." Brandon scoffed. "This is petty," and reached for his jacket. Megan opened her folder. Receipts, printouts, a simple spreadsheet with dates and places. She laid down the burner phone like a tool on a workbench. "Messages," she said, "from C." I tapped the remote. On screen, a cropped thread appeared, the line that makes debate unnecessary. "He pays for everything. Once I'm set, it's just you and me." Claire's color drained. "That's not—" she started. I raised my hand once. Calm, not commanding. "Please let the evidence finish." The room obeyed the tone adults use when the truth is heavy. I cued the last clip. The restaurant call played, my recording from 2 nights earlier. Claire's voice unmistakable. "Don't worry, he's clueless. After the honeymoon, I'm done." The sound of bar chatter behind her made it more real, not less. Claire's father stood, face flushed, words lodged somewhere between love and fury. "Is this true?" he asked, not moving his eyes from his daughter. Claire reached for him and for me in the same motion, palms up, empty. Brandon turned toward the door. Megan stepped into his path and slid the folder across the table to Claire's dad. "Bank statements, hotel logs, cross-checked." She didn't look at Brandon. "Sit down," she said, quiet as a judge. He did. I felt the odd calm of a job done to spec. No shortcuts, no splinters. "This isn't a fight," I said to the room. "It's clarity." The screen paused on Claire's face in lobby light. For a long beat, no one filled the silence. Then my mother pushed her chair back and stood with me. I turned the TV off and let the room keep the images. Claire reached toward me like she could rewind a month with touch. "Jake, please. We can fix this." I kept my voice low. "You built it this way." I took the small ring box from my pocket and set it beside my water. Not dramatic, just final. "We're done." Claire's mother sobbed once. Her father stared at the folder like it was a map out of a place he never meant to visit. Brandon muttered about lawyers. Megan didn't flinch. "Call yours," she said. "I'm calling mine in the morning." She gathered her copies, spine straight, the way you walk when a door closes that needed to. My dad touched my shoulder, a simple, steadying weight older men recognize. "Let's go," he said. I nodded. As I reached for my jacket, I looked at Claire one last time. "The truth didn't ruin this," I said. "It revealed it." I opened the door. The night felt clean. The clip with Claire's voice, "He pays for everything," hung in the dining room like smoke you can't wave away. People don't gasp at our age. They go quiet in a way that scares you more. My mother's eyes watered but stayed steady. My father's jaw set like a vice he'd used 1,000 times. Claire reached for explanations and grabbed air. Across the table, Brandon scoffed, already pushing his chair back. Megan stood, No theatrics, just the posture of someone done being managed, and said, "Enough." She didn't shout. Adults don't need volume when the facts are loud. Claire's dad asked me, "How long have you known?" I said, "Long enough to be certain." He nodded once, like a man signing for a package he didn't order but can't deny. The TV's glow dimmed to black. Nobody touched dessert. The truth had turned sweetness stale. Brandon muttered, "This is ridiculous," and reached for his keys. Megan placed her folder on the table between us like a stop sign. Brandon rose. Megan didn't block him with her body. She used paper. "Bank statements, hotel logs, burner phone messages," she said, flipping the folder open to the spreadsheet we built. Dates matched photos, charges matched timestamps. It read like an owner's manual for the life they'd been running. Claire whispered my name like it might reset the room. I kept my palms flat on the table and my voice even. "Please let the evidence finish." Brandon laughed the way men do when they've gotten away with things before. Megan tapped a page and said, calm as a bailiff, "Sit down." He looked at her, then at the faces around him. Parents, in-laws, the audience he thought he'd never have. He sat. The absurdity drained out of him like air from a tire. Claire's mother clutched a napkin until it wrinkled to dust. My dad glanced at me, a small nod. "You did the hard part right." I lifted the final page. The room leaned in. I cued the short recording from the restaurant. Claire's voice, crisp as glass. "After the honeymoon, I'm done." It was the last hinge. Her father closed his eyes. Her mother's breath hitched. If you've ever reached the end of a long repair and turned the breaker back on, you know the feeling. Either the lights come up, or the house tells you where the fault really is. The lights came up. No more shadows to hide in. Brandon stared at the table like it held a trap door. Megan took back her folder and said, "I'll have my attorney contact you." She didn't look at Claire. She didn't need to. Claire tried one final story. Stress, confusion, bad judgment. But the tape in her own voice kept playing in everyone's head. I stood, not to tower, just to signal the work was complete. "We're done," I said. The words landed and stayed. Brandon's keys lay untouched. Claire's wine glass trembled. The room didn't argue. It understood. Claire reached for me, tears cutting tracks through the story she'd rehearsed. "Please don't leave me," she said, like the room hadn't just heard her future without me. I kept my voice low, the way grown men do when the decision is already made. "You already did." No echo, no anger, just the truth landing where it belonged. I went to the bedroom and pulled the small bag I'd packed days ago, the one with a spare shirt, documents, and the ring receipt I no longer needed. Zip, click, simple sounds you remember. In the hallway, my mother brushed my sleeve. A quiet, "We're with you." My father gave the kind of nod men trade when words would wobble. Claire sobbed, promising counseling, promising change, promising the version she should have chosen the first time. I set the ring box on the entry table, square and still. "This isn't punishment," I said. "It's protection." I opened the door. Cool night air, clean as a reset, met me halfway. I stepped out, closed it gently, and felt the latch catch like a final, solid yes. Months later, the dust settled where it needed to. Claire lost the wedding, the circle that cheered her on, and the image she curated. Vendors canceled, deposits clawed back, friends went quiet. Brandon lost his wife, then his job. Reputation doesn't commute well once truth gets a parking pass. I didn't celebrate any of it. I moved. New keys, new routines, honest quiet. I cooked for one, called my parents back more, put mileage on a pair of walking shoes. Small repairs, the cabinet hinge, then the parts of me that bent to keep a lie standing. Here's what stayed. Yelling never wins the long game. Being a witness does. Discipline over drama, sight over silence. The truth was brutal, yes, but it saved me from a lifetime of performing a part I didn't audition for. If you're standing where I stood, know this. You don't have to break things to break a pattern. Choose to see, then act. If this story hit home, comment, see, and choose sight.